Dog leads and more to the point, slip leads. Hi, my name's Charlie Thorburn. Welcome to More Dog Undogs. Just going to do a little video on slip leads and the different leads we might use and why. Now, all of the time we use a lead, it's a slip lead. Okay, we don't use collar and lead just because none of our dogs wear collars. We don't use retractable leads because they should be burnt. And as for harnesses, you know, they're the devil's work. So I'm just going to run through. Now, many of you have seen on our videos us using quite thin slip leads, such as this one here. Now, the first thing you've got to do when you're looking for a slip lead is make sure it's got no elasticity in it, okay? So when I tighten that up and I pull it, they're just, whatever I put in with this hand comes out of this hand. There's no sort of elastic kind of stretching the lead out and back again, because the purpose for the slip lead is we correct the dog, we give them a tug here and the dog feels it. If this has got any sort of elastic type thing in it, then it basically acts as like a shock absorber, and the dog, you know, doesn't really feel your correction. It feels a sort of numbed down, dull version of it, and it's kind of like, oh, what was that? So the ones with elastic in them, really just a waste of time. Should be thrown in the bin. Whoever makes them should just stop making them. As you're wasting everybody's time, you're wasting sort of the Earth's resources. It literally is a complete waste of time. If you can use one of those elastic ones, don't even bother with a slip lead. Just, you know, use what you like, because it's a waste of time. Okay. So you'll see us with older dogs using these. Now, I love these leads, these little narrow ones, because I can fold them up like that. They take up very little space. I can get 4 or 5 of them in my pocket on a shoot day in case I need a lead. I can have a whole load of them in the car or whatever, just tucked into the door. But I only use these leads on dogs that are already really kind of understand the concept of walking to heel, because it's quite a harsh, you know, there's very little surface area. It's quite a harsh lead. I'd never use a lead like this on a kind of 4 or 5 month old dog who's just learning how to do it, because I don't want to upset them. I don't want them to have a negative experience of being on the lead. I'm just really using these for like my older dogs, my trained dogs. And when I say trained, I mean trained to walk to heel. So an 8, 9 month old dog who knows how to walk to heel really nicely, I'll quite happily use one of these, because really they're never pulling on it and they're very rarely being corrected. And when they are being corrected, I don't mind it being a little bit sharper on them, because actually they, you know, they've already learned and they shouldn't be pulling. My sort of standard go-to lead is just somewhere slightly thicker. So if I do that, is that helpful? I have no idea what people are going to ask what these measurements are. I'm sure we can say what they are in terms of Joe, maybe right on the we'll measure them and right underneath what they are when you're watching this. This is my kind of go-to lead that I use for most of the dogs that I'm working with. It's pale blue and no one else has a pale blue one, so I know it's mine and I know who gave it to me. And sadly that person died, but so it has a bit of a memory for me. But this is my kind of go-to, because this is kind of somewhere in the middle. I've always got this in my jacket pocket when I'm out shooting or whatever, just because if I just need one lead. And quite often you will have seen on some of my videos, I make a loop out of the second end of the lead. So I might have one dog on one end of the lead and I hook them over their mother or their grandfather or someone, so that I've kind of got them tied together like that, so that I can have them sitting next to me and be shooting at the same time. But if I was doing some work with a young dog, or for that matter, an old dog, a much older dog who was maybe just going for a walk, I might use a much thicker lead like this. So if we put this around a young puppy's neck, you know, this is nice big surface area. It's a kind of softy kind of feel to it. And this is what we would probably use at the very beginning of their training. Now, some of you will have seen some of the lessons we've recorded with Ash doing lessons, and he's got a narrow one like this, if not even narrow. And one of the reasons that we do that is because a lot of the dogs that come here for lessons are kind of hardened to a tug on the lead. They've been pulling like mad. The owners have been correcting them erratically and badly. And so they're sort of, their necks are sort of toughened up. So if we put a nice kind of softy, big thick lead like this and gave them a tug, they'd be like, great, I can pull on that all day long. So it needs to be a little bit sharper, a little bit more to the point with them. But a young dog, we would use a much thicker lead like this. So what I would probably suggest to you is, if you were going to be buying some sort of training kit and dog leads, is we would suggest you get a thin one and you get a thick one. I probably wouldn't bother with the one in the middle, even though that's my favorite. Because then you've got a lead now. Yeah, the ideal world, we've still got this lead in 10 years' time, but the reality is we've lost it. We've lent it to somebody. That's what generally goes wrong with my leads. I have a pile of them in my pocket that I very rarely use when I'm out working my dogs. And people are like, oh, have you got a spare lead? And I'm dishing out leads like I'm a sort of vending machine. And I never bloody see any of them. Oh, yeah, I'll give it back to you next time. Yeah, you will. Bloody hell, you won't. I'll never see it again. But if you were going to buy a lead with the intention of I'm going to buy 2 leads, I'm going to have them for the rest of my dog's life, I would buy a thick one like this, which we start with our dog. We start training them as a puppy. Then as they're older, we move on to this one. And then as they're much older, we move back to this one as they're kind of, well, we're going down the street. We want to pop them on a lead. And this is a nicer lead to have around the likes of Chino or someone's neck who really is way too old to start sort of getting corrected on the lead. Because if you've not got it fixed by the time they're 9.5, you're probably not going to get there. Let's be honest here. I mean, the old saying of can't teach old dogs new tricks has its limitations, but there is also limitations in terms of if our dog is not walking to heel nicely on a slip lead when they're 9.5, I would probably just give up. Okay. So those would be my 2 recommendations of the sort of thickness. You can see there is quite a big difference. And it's purely, as I repeat again, it's a much softer, more gentle tug on a young dog. There's a much bigger surface area touching the dog's neck versus a sort of harsher, more sort of punishment corrective. Now, well, I'm just go back to that. When I'm putting a young dog on the lead, it's not about getting them to walk to heel perfectly. It's just about building up that relationship with us, them, and the lead, and it's not to be a negative. Once, however, a dog has learnt how to heel and they do it wrong, I'm going to give them a bit more of a correction and be like, hey, you're 2 years old. You shouldn't be blooming pulling on the lead. Get a grip. Okay. The other thing as well is when we're doing it when they're young, it's also softer on our hands. Now I've got kind of farmers calloused hands, but obviously if I worked in an office and had a normal kind of job, then I, or a proper job, I would have, using one of these leads can be, harsher on your hands. So we've got a kind of the softer beginning version and then the middle one and then back to the softer one. Remember, you get out what you put in. I hope this has been helpful and we'll see you all next time.